And we're back. Let's hope this next episode is less problematic than the last one. Let's put it in the player. You know what? That was a pretty fun episode. I liked that more than the last one. So this first segment features Indy and his father and his mother and a bunch of other British colonists. So the first half of the episode is about Indy's adventure in British East Africa, where he, his father, his mother, a bunch of British colonists, all meet Teddy Roosevelt, and they go out and they hunt and stuff. Indy is initially very idealistic, and he idolizes Roosevelt quite a bit. But I can never really tell if the episode is trying to idolize Roosevelt, if it's trying to praise him, or if it's trying to criticize him. Because it's like, he has flaws, and Indy is definitely sad when he kills a bunch of the rhinos, but then he also perks up quite a bit when Roosevelt is basically like, no, it's okay. We're people. We're allowed to kill endangered species. I don't know. I can never tell how critical this episode is supposed to be of Roosevelt at any given time. It's just, some minutes it's like he's making Indy break down crying over the deaths of rare animals, and other minutes he's playing checkers with Indy, and Indy is like, wow, that was a cool move, Roosevelt. Or Indy is like, yeah, he's a boxer, he's a hunter, he's cool, and he's epic. I really like how Indy is portrayed in this episode, and how he cares about animals, and he's not racist, and he befriends the kid from the village, the Kenyan village, and it's a really nice portrayal of Indy. He's nice, and he's sensitive. It's like, this is how I imagine Indy to be like when he was a kid. Oh, and he introduces himself, if I'm not mistaken, for the first time as Indiana in this episode, or Indy or whatever, and not Henry Jones Jr. Which, I mean, I don't know if we're ever actually given a reason in the episode for him to name himself Indiana, but it's pretty nice nonetheless. It's pretty cool to see him do that for the first time. No, that's the kind of Phantom Menace shit I come to the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles for. It feels almost like two plots, though. It feels like maybe Roosevelt should be the focus of the plot, but it's really more focused on, like, Indy trying to find the artifact, or whatever it was. I forget exactly what it was, but I feel like the main plot is Indy befriending the boy from the Kenyan village, introducing himself, trying to get past the language barrier, and finding the artifact with him. But it's also kind of about him meeting Roosevelt, and that's definitely what's stressed at the beginning and at the end a little, but Roosevelt feels almost more like an add-on. It feels like if he wasn't there, it feels like the episode would be tighter, have a better story, but, you know, I still like the episode anyway. It's still a pretty good episode. I like, Indy wants to go off and do his own thing. He wants to be independent, and people don't like that he does that. But he does ultimately save the day in the end, which is pretty nice. It's pretty nice to see. I like this heartwarming stuff. Oh, and on the way from the first half to the second half, there's a bridging segment that shows their journey, I guess, from Kenya to Paris, which is where the second half takes place. And Indy aged a lot again. He aged a few years, probably at least 5 years. He's probably at least 13 in the bridging segment. And it's weird. It shows up again at the end, but then in the second half of the episode, he doesn't stay that age, just because, that was actually filmed at the same time as the first half. And it's really weird how he fluctuates age. Like, I know exactly why it is, and I don't know how they would get around it if they were editing this into a TV movie, but I don't know. It's still pretty jarring. I like how this episode in particular, aren't particularly like Western supremacist. I was kind of half expecting, no, like at least 3/4 expecting, this show to be kind of like, oh wow, look at all these uncivilized natives. These white people have to come and colonize them. I say that as a white person. But no, it's surprisingly like Indy isn't racist. He just wants to hang out with people. And while it doesn't necessarily portray colonization as a bad thing, which of course it was. It does also seem to say, hey, you know what? Traditional Western art and culture isn't the only way to go, you know? These other places have a ton of value too. You know, it's not like just like tradition and what is, you know, most currently popular, what's generally seen as the best is necessarily like the best or whatever. That's kind of reflected in the second half of this episode because it's about Picasso and his him trying to prove how cool Cubism is in a world that doesn't like Cubism and values more realism and other values more traditionally drawn art. And I don't know, those themes kind of tie in together, you know? It's like Picasso is trying to prove how other styles can be valid and can be interesting and are of artistic merit, and also kind of ties into the message of, at least what I've seen from the show so far, which is that other cultures can have value too. Like, obviously, Indy is in Paris, and he's like, wow, look at all this cool stuff from Europe. It's epic. That's the second time I've said that in this video. But he's also, in the first half of the episode, he's in Kenya, and he's like, oh, yeah, look at all this cool stuff in Kenya. I really like the animals, and I really like the language, and I really like the people. And it's surprisingly not Western supremacist-y is my main point. Oh, and Indy continues to introduce himself as Indy, but then his tutor is with him, and she says, like, oh, no, you're Henry Jones Jr. And I don't think we're supposed to like the tutor very much. Like, I was expecting this to be kind of through Indy's eyes, and you only don't like her because you're seeing her through Indy's eyes, but no, she does seem to have some generally bad qualities. Like, she talks about how uncivilized these places are. And she also reprimands Indy. I did mention this, but in the first episode, she reprimands Indy for asking questions about other cultures. And he's like, you know what happens when you die? And Indy is like, yeah, but I want to know what other cultures think too. You know, he's not necessarily super committed or anything. He wants to learn more. And I think it's pretty cool that Indy is portrayed. I'm making my way back to that I like how Indy is portrayed point, but I think it's important to stress that, you know, Indy here, he hasn't necessarily been hardened by life yet, you know? He's still an idealistic young kid. It's like seeing, I keep bringing up the Phantom Menace, but it seriously is like seeing Jake Lloyd Anakin, 9-year-old Anakin, in the Phantom Menace. But, you know, I kind of like the Phantom Menace. Feel free to burn me at the stake, but I like it. I like these early episodes of this show too. You know, even if they can be boring and maybe if it doesn't make any sense for a 9-year-old to be in a war zone, I still like it. I still find it fun and good, and I enjoy watching it, even if there isn't a whole lot of action. I mentioned before that this episode is about Indy meeting Picasso in Paris, and it's kind of weird how antagonistically they portray Picasso. Like, I didn't know he was like that in real life, but it's kind like sometimes it's like he's a bad guy and we need to prove him wrong, but also sometimes it's like, yeah, look at Picasso. Picasso is cool. He's a epic gamer. I don't know why I said that. But basically, it feels kind of torn with what it thinks about Picasso. Like, is Picasso a cool dude who's good at art and who we should respect? Or is he a pompous asshole, I don't know how to phrase it better, who gets mad at other people for not immediately seeing his genius. Like, I get that people can be multi-layered, but it seems almost like they have one layer, one characterization of him sometimes, and then other times they have a different characterization of him, and it's like it swaps out. Like, it's not at one point you see him as like a rogue and a pompous, full of himself guy, and then after that you see his good qualities. No, it like swaps out. It's like, yeah, he's bad, now he's good, now he's bad, now he's good, now he's bad. And, you know, like, I understand that people can be multifaceted, but it just feels almost lazy and inconsistent. Oh, here's a note I made that just says that Picasso hates British people because prejudice against British people is funny. Tuesday, innit? It is kind of weird how willing Picasso is to like socialize with a 9-year-old boy, and like, I don't know. It is just kind of weird, especially since they do portray him as like this rogue with many flaws. Like, I don't know. It really is kind of weird, but I don't know. I guess I like the episode anyway. I said before I like the Phantom Menace enough, and you know, the show is really more about edutainment. It's about teaching kids about history and using a young Indiana Jones to do that. It's not really so much about like being a serious historical drama. No, it's about a 9-year-old who goes on adventures and meets historical figures. That's it. It's not supposed to have a ton of action. It's not supposed to make a ton of sense. And you know what? I applaud it for what it's trying to do. I feel like that's been my conclusion these last 2 times. Yesterday I condemned it a bit more for racism. But, you know what? I do appreciate the show for what it's trying to do. As long as it isn't racist, it's pretty fun entertainment. So I think that's going to be about it for this video. I think I'm going to call it here. Overall, you know, like I said, I like the episode, and I hope you guys have a fun day today, Super Bowl Sunday. I'm not going to be watching the Super Bowl.